Your Highness? What? The Emperor spun his chair from the window. I greet Your Majesty the Emperor. Ha, now you openly defy my orders. You disobey me and force your way in here? And my servants have grown bold enough to call on Commander Miller and dismiss the knights guarding your palace. The Emperor surged to his feet, his face darkening with fury. Throw this man in prison at once. The butler quietly closed his eyes, bracing himself for what he already feared was coming. Your Majesty. The Crown Prince spoke in a low, even voice. The Emperor ignored him and fixed his gaze on the butler. What are you standing there for? Call the commander, now. Yes, well, the commander will not be coming. The Crown Prince's words cut across the butlers cleanly. Both the Emperor and the butler turned toward him at once. What did you just say? The Emperor's voice came out strange, almost breathless with shock. I gave Commander James Miller orders not to enter this room. For a moment the air in the office seemed to freeze solid. From whom? The Emperor could barely push the words out. From me. You dare, you dare. The Emperor shook with rage, staring at the Crown Prince as though he intended to destroy him where he stood. All the color drained from the butler's face. The commander of the Imperial Guard answered to one authority, His Majesty the Emperor. That was the unbroken law of the palace. But the commander had not followed the Emperor's orders. He had followed the Crown Prince's. There was only one word for that. Treason. The old butler stared at the Crown Prince with an expression like a man watching the world come apart at the seams. Why, Your Highness? Why would you do this? The Crown Prince's face remained composed, carrying none of the alarm that the weight of his own words ought to have produced. I am informed that His Majesty the Emperor has been gravely ill. Since His Majesty declined to visit the royal physician, I have brought the physician here. Please step forward. A white-haired imperial court physician moved hesitantly into view, visibly frightened, his brown eyes darting with barely concealed anxiety. The Emperor's face had gone nearly red. He fixed the Crown Prince with a look that could have killed. Have you lost your mind entirely? The Crown Prince turned to the physician without acknowledging the Emperor. Please examine him. Yes, Your Highness. The imperial physician edged toward the Emperor with sweat beading at his temples. The Emperor ground his teeth, straightened in his chair, and bellowed toward the door. Is there no one out there? The Crown Prince is committing treason. The physician looked at the Crown Prince with a white face. The Crown Prince did not look back. He watched the Emperor, his expression unreadable. The Emperor snarled at him with open contempt. I knew it would come to this. I should have seen it years ago. And then, abruptly, the Emperor's face went bloodless. He slumped sideways in his chair. The imperial physician lunged forward and caught him, working quickly. After a moment, the Emperor's eyes opened again. The physician met his gaze directly before lowering his own. What is the matter with you? The Emperor snapped. I beg your pardon, Your Majesty? The Emperor looked up in genuine surprise, as if startled to find himself being examined. Your Majesty, do you not remember? Remember what? Why are you checking my pulse? The Emperor pulled his wrist free from the physician's grip and looked around the room with a frown. Prince, why are you here? The imperial physician's eyes trembled. He had followed the Crown Prince here with skepticism. He no longer felt skeptical. What are the symptoms? The Crown Prince asked quietly. He appears to be experiencing brief episodes of memory loss. There is likely a problem with the brain. The physician spoke to the Crown Prince while continuing to examine the Emperor's eyes. What? Are you out of your mind? The Emperor roared beside them. Neither the Crown Prince nor the physician flinched. The Crown Prince turned to the butler with a level look. Butler. How long has this been happening? The butler answered with the flat effect of a man who has already accepted that everything is over. Several months, Your Highness. The Crown Prince looked back at the physician. Can it be treated? Not without a thorough examination. I cannot say for certain until then. The Emperor sat trembling, watching them speak about him as though he were not in the room. Then his eyes went cold. He drew himself up and shouted as loudly as he could, pitching his voice to carry through the door. Commander of the guard, arrest these traitors. All of them. Now. The closed office door swung slowly open. The Emperor turned toward it with murder in his eyes. Step. Step. The Emperor turned at the sound of footsteps, and his eyes went wide. The Duke of the West stood before him. The Emperor stared, and something instinctive and cold moved through him. He pressed himself back into his chair without meaning to. His mouth had gone dry as dust. Why does the Duke of the West appear here, in my office, in the middle of the night? His golden eyes filled with something that had never lived in them before, confusion. Genuine, unguarded confusion. His gaze moved rapidly between the Crown Prince and the Duke of the West, standing side by side, both without expression. And then understanding struck him like lightning. The Emperor's teeth came together. Duke. His voice had lost its steadiness without his permission. Did you arrange all of this? So, you drew the West into his camp as well. You designed this from the beginning. Answer me. Did you deceive the Crown Prince into this? The Emperor's accusation broke across the Duke of the West. The Duke of the West said nothing. Ha. Yes. Of course. There is no way this fool would have done something this decisive on his own. You were behind it all. You've been planning to take the throne through the crown. Prince from the start. The Crown Prince stepped forward, placing himself between the Emperor's glare and the Duke of the West. This is my choice. Not the Duke of the West's. What nonsense. Despite the Emperor's roar, the Crown Prince's expression did not shift. His Majesty the Emperor is no longer capable of conducting the affairs of state. You believe in the power of this scheming Duke, and that is why you help him. Rebellion is punishable by death. Treason is punishable by death. Your Majesty is ill. The Crown Prince said it quietly and sincerely. It did not reach the Emperor. How dare you invent an illness and use it to drive me from my throne? Is there no one out there? But no matter how loudly the Emperor called, no knight came through the door. Why doesn't anyone come? Why? The Emperor could not contain it. He shook with the force of his own fury, and then, slowly, his eyes fell shut. When they opened again, he looked around the room in confusion, blinking. His gaze snagged on the Duke of the West and narrowed. What is the Duke of the West doing here? He looked around quickly. The butler was kneeling on the floor with tears running silently down his face. The imperial physician was watching him with careful, measuring eyes. The Crown Prince stood with an expression too heavy for his age. Prince, how did you come here? You were under confinement. The Crown Prince held his gaze. From this moment forward, His Majesty's governing authority is suspended. The Emperor's eyes went wide, as if the words had physically struck him. What did the Crown Prince just say? Suspended? How dare you? As the Emperor stared at the Crown Prince with eyes blazing, the Duke of the West, who had been standing silently behind, lowered his head. I accept. The Emperor turned to him with a look of open bewilderment. Before the Emperor could form the question, the Duke of the West stepped toward him unhurried, without hesitation. What is the meaning of this? Duke of the West, the frightened Emperor stumbled over his own words. The Duke of the West leaned down toward him. At such close range, meeting the full weight of those gray eyes, the Emperor found that his body had gone still on its own, unable to move. The Duke of the West spoke so quietly that only the Emperor could hear. Your Majesty should not have touched what belongs to the vines. The Emperor stared at him, something small and cold breaking open in his chest. What? The Crown Prince is suspending his authority. Removing him from the throne. He searched the Duke of the West's face for an answer, wordless. One corner of the Duke's mouth lifted, slowly, coldly, confirming everything. Your Majesty. The Duke of the West's voice was barely above a whisper. Rest now.